Picture this. It's a Tuesday morning in June 2025. You're sipping coffee on a $6 billion floating city called the USS Nimitz, when suddenly China decides to play the world's most expensive game of chicken. Spoiler alert, they lose. Badly. What happened next was basically a masterclass in why you don't poke the world's most lethal navy with a stick made of wishful thinking and outdated hardware. At 0923 hours on June 14th, the USS Princeton was doing what American warships do best, keeping international waters international while China throws maritime tantrums. Their spy radar suddenly lit up with something that would make Beijing's generals wish they'd stayed in bed. A Chinese Type 052D destroyer, lurking 200 kilometers away like that awkward guy at parties, suddenly gunned it from 18 to 30 knots in under 90 seconds. Here's the thing about the Princeton, she's not just any destroyer. She's basically a floating Swiss Army knife of destruction, packed with 122 vertical launch cells loaded with enough firepower to turn any Chinese ship into the world's most expensive artificial reef. The Chinese captain had just received orders from Beijing, make the Americans blink first. Beijing was about to learn that making the US Navy blink is like trying to win a staring contest with a shark, theoretically possible, but you're probably going to end up as lunch. But wait, because if one Chinese ship making poor life choices isn't exciting enough for you, Beijing decided to double down on stupid. Inside Princeton's Combat Information Center, the tactical action officer watched the Chinese destroyer approach with the calm of someone who knows they're holding all the aces in a poker game where the other guy brought Monopoly money. The math was beautifully simple and terrifyingly one-sided. The Chinese YJ-18 anti-ship missiles? Sure, they could cover the remaining distance in under 4 minutes once launched. Cute. The Princeton's SM-6s in surface mode could reach about 240 nautical miles and swat incoming missiles like flies at a barbecue. It's like bringing a water gun to a nuclear fight. Technically a weapon, but you're still going to have a very bad day. The Princeton's spy radar painted a picture so clear you could practically count the rivets on the Chinese destroyer. At current speed, the enemy would reach weapons engagement range in exactly 17 minutes. But here's the beautiful part. The captain's response was pure American confidence. Let's see how badly they want to embarrass themselves first. Speaking of embarrassment, you know what's worse than challenging the US Navy with inferior weapons? Doing it while surrounded by witnesses. The South China Sea was packed tighter than a Black Friday sale with 46 commercial vessels within 50 miles, all depending on the US Navy's presence like kids depend on parents to keep the monsters away. A Singapore-flagged container ship loaded with semiconductors, a South Korean LNG tanker worth $200 million. All would be at risk if Beijing succeeded in turning international waters into their personal swimming pool. But that would require them to actually win a fight against the US Navy, which hasn't happened since, well, never. The USS Nimitz herself, 104,600 tons of floating American diplomacy carrying 90 of the world's most advanced aircraft, adjusted her flight operations with the precision of a Swiss watch while her escorts moved into position like chess pieces played by a grandmaster. But China wasn't done making questionable decisions. Oh no, they were just getting warmed up for the main event. At 0935, the E-2D Hawkeye, basically a flying god with radar eyes that can see 400 miles in every direction, detected multiple aircraft launching from the Chinese carrier Shandong. The radar signatures screamed J-15 fighters climbing hard and heading south as if they actually stood a chance against American naval aviation. Here's where it gets hilarious. The J-15s were struggling to gain altitude like overloaded cargo planes thanks to their ski jump launch system. While American Super Hornets blast off catapults at full combat weight with fuel to spare, Chinese fighters launch with reduced fuel and weapons loads because physics doesn't care about your national pride. The technological mismatch was like watching someone bring a calculator to a supercomputer convention. The F-18's APG-79 radar could track dozens of targets simultaneously, while the J-15's mechanically scanned radar swept back and forth like a lighthouse, basically broadcasting, "Here I am," to anyone with functioning ears. But wait, there's more. Because apparently, Chinese military planning includes submarines that are about as stealthy as a marching band. 1 minute later, Princeton's sonar operators detected what they politely called a possible submerged contact, 80 nautical miles away. In reality, they'd found a Chinese Type 039 diesel-electric submarine making noise like a freight train having a breakdown on rusty tracks. Any competent submarine crew would have been mortified. The thing was so loud it might as well have been broadcasting its position on AM radio with a mariachi band accompaniment. The Princeton sonar suite had been tracking this floating noisemaker for over an hour, cataloging its acoustic signature like a zoologist studying a particularly dumb species of whale. Now here's where American naval aviation gets to show off like the overachieving student in a class full of people who forgot to study. By 0937, the USS Nimitz's flight deck erupted into the kind of controlled chaos that only American carriers have truly mastered. FA-18 E-Super Hornets from VFA-14 top hatters rocketed off the catapults at 45-second intervals, a ballet of precision that Chinese carriers, dependent on inefficient ski jumps, could only dream of matching while crying into their green tea. The first division of Super Hornets climbed through 15,000 feet, their radars already painting the incoming J-15s at maximum range. Every F-18 was connected via Link 16, sharing sensor data in real time, like a hive mind of freedom. Chinese pilots, meanwhile, relied on voice commands and individual sensors, like trying to fight a networked team while blindfolded and slightly drunk. But America's technological superiority was about to get even more unfair, because apparently we brought electronic warfare to a knife fight. Enter the EA-18G Growlers, electronic warfare variants that carry ALQ-99 jamming pods capable of frying enemy electronics from 100 miles away like a microwave on steroids. As they established their jamming orbits, Chinese communications began fragmenting faster than a dropped iPhone. On Chinese radar screens, ghost contacts multiplied like rabbits on energy drinks. American fighters appeared and disappeared, multiplied and merged. What looked like 4 F-18 became 12, then 20. Radar locks broke and reformed constantly. The J-15 pilots found themselves fighting phantoms while real threats maneuvered unseen, like playing hide-and-seek with invisible ninjas. And just when China thought their day couldn't get worse, America decided to demonstrate why we own the underwater real estate too. At 1547, a Virginia-class attack submarine that had been shadowing the Chinese formation for 8 days decided to surface 6 nautical miles from the Shandong, close enough for Chinese lookouts to see her black hull with their Mark I eyeballs and probably question their entire career choices. The psychological impact was devastating. 8 days of undetected operations meant their entire anti-submarine screen, helicopters, sonobuoys, hull-mounted sonar, probably some guy with a really good fishing pole, had failed to detect the 7,900-ton American submarine. If this had been war, their carrier would already be practicing its submarine impersonation at the bottom of the ocean. The sub's commanding officer ordered an emergency surface purely for dramatic effect. The submarine burst from the water like a mechanical whale, having the world's most intimidating bad day. Water cascading off her hull in the afternoon sun while Chinese photographers got perfect shots of American undersea dominance. But the real fireworks were still happening in the sky, where American pilots were giving free-flying lessons to increasingly desperate students. In the air, American fighters demonstrated air combat maneuvering at the expense of increasingly desperate Chinese pilots who were learning that fuel management is more important than national pride. The J-15s, already running low from their ski jump launches and hard climb to altitude, found themselves unable to match the Americans turn for turn. Each engagement ended the same way. American fighters in firing position, Chinese fighters defensive, and burning precious fuel like it was going out of style. One by one, the Chinese fighters peeled off, heading back to the Shandong with near-empty tanks and bruised egos. Some probably saw the bingo fuel light they'd only encountered in simulators, suddenly understanding why their instructors always stressed fuel management over heroic maneuvers. And finally, the moment when China realized they'd brought a butter knife to a nuclear sword fight. By 1623, the Shandong's carrier strike group began what official Chinese communications diplomatically called completing scheduled exercises. Everyone with functioning brain cells knew the truth. They'd come to demonstrate Chinese naval power, to intimidate lawful navigation, to claim waters that didn't belong to them, like that annoying neighbor who insists your driveway is actually theirs. Instead, they'd received a comprehensive education in why the South China Sea is effectively America's 6th Great Lake. 48 American aircraft had filled the sky, electronic warfare had turned their systems into expensive paperweights, and a submarine had played 8 days of underwater hide-and-seek before popping up to wave hello like an aquatic jack-in-the-box. The Chinese had orchestrated what they thought was a multi-domain intimidation campaign. What they actually delivered was a masterclass demonstration of why challenging the U.S. Navy Navy in open water remains a spectacularly stupid idea that ranks somewhere between poking sleeping bears and telling your wife her sister is prettier on the list of things that will definitely ruin your day. So there you have it. 10 facts about why China's attempt to intimidate the US Navy went about as well as a chocolate teapot convention in the Sahara Desert. If you enjoyed watching Beijing learn some very expensive lessons about naval warfare, smash that like button harder than American missiles would have smashed that Chinese destroyer if things had gone kinetic. Subscribe for more military analysis that's actually fun to watch, and hit that notification bell because apparently the world's navies keep providing us with content by making questionable tactical decisions. Got thoughts on this maritime chess match? Drop them in the comments. But remember, all the best military strategists are apparently on YouTube now, so keep it classy, armchair admirals.